All right, we're on. Harriet Farlow, how you going?
Oh, I'm good. Little tired, but aren't we all?
Oh yeah, you've got a lot going on in the last few weeks. I've been keeping track of all that on LinkedIn and all that stuff. So must be pretty exciting, but tiring at the same time. But hey, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here today.
No, thanks so much for having me on. It's such a pleasure.
No dramas. The pleasure's all ours. So yeah, how's it happen? Well, looks like you're in Canberra, and looks like it's pretty cold.
Yeah,
What's the goss on that?
yeah, no, it's good. It's very chilly in Canberra. I do love it, but every winter I sort of think, gosh, I don't think it's ever been this cold. But like I used to live in New York, and I have the controversial opinion that Canberra is a better place to live than New York, and I know that I'm definitely the odd one out on that one, but I do truly believe it, at least in terms of livability. So it's all right. I can't complain.
Oh, Canberra is beautiful. I mean, yeah, no complaints there. I guess I love Canberra. Whenever I get a chance to go there, I take it. I love Canberra. It's a nice little town. It's obviously purpose built for the politicians and all that, but
Yeah,
it's,
can't help
uh,
it.
it's pretty nice. I like the fact that Canberra is so close to a lot of outdoor activities, and like you can
Mhm.
literally, an hour out you can go skiing. You don't get, I mean, in Australia, for people listening internationally, we don't have a lot of skiing resorts and all that, obviously, so
Mhm.
it's a rare thing to have where you can literally, drive, um, get skiing done and come back home. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Canberra's pretty good. I do feel that Canberra has ups and downs, as in depending on what the government's doing, as in like
Mhm.
the budgets and how much they're spending and all that. Like a lot of
I guess so. Yeah. I mean I grew up in Canberra, so it's funny being here as an adult and being exposed to, all the government and political mechanics, and especially through my role in government, that just wasn't a thing when you're growing up. It's a very different place, but it's no, it's got the best of everything. It's one of the few cities where you have a CBD, but you might pass a kangaroo at any time. And there's
yeah,
something
exactly.
really really about that.
It's one of those typical Australian big town slash cities.
Yeah.
But I think it's very relevant, as in government is there, right? It's a bit like DC, Washington DC. I try to explain it to
Mm.
my American friends. It's like it's a bit like that. Like it's kind of purpose
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah. When I traveled to DC, I definitely felt um, a lot of similarities with Canberra, apart from the scale.
Off from the scale. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Where
good.
are you
That's really
joining
good.
us from, Vish?
Sorry,
Where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from the Blue Mountains National Park,
Oh, lovely.
like a couple of hours out west from Sydney.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been up here. Probably
Hmm.
have. Most people have.
Hmm.
But it's a nice little lovely. I wouldn't even call it a town where I am. It's more like a village.
Hmm.
But it's very cold, unlike just like Canberra. It's yeah. At the moment, I think it's around 4 degrees
Yeah.
Celsius,
Okay.
which
Probably
is
even colder than Canberra.
pretty
So
pretty
I really
cold.
can't complain at all then.
Yeah, it's pretty cold. But yeah, I mean we're pretty high up, considering Australian
Yeah.
altitudes. Um, but it's nice. Been here for many years now, and we love it. It's a small community. Everyone knows everyone. Like I
Hmm.
said, it's a village really where I am. Just a
Hmm.
tiny little place with a few shops and everything, but not much. Other than that, I do have a massive lake not far from me. I also have a lot of walking trails, biking trails, so very outdoorsy, as you
Mm.
expect a national park to be. So yeah,
Yeah. Great.
nothing like New York though. Hey,
It was an interesting experience. Yeah.
yeah, New York is. I was there last year, and it's definitely coming from Australia, coming from even like Sydney the biggest city in Australia. It's a big thing when you go to places like New York or
Mhm.
London. You suddenly feel like, oh my god, that's a city, right? It just never ends. Whereas even like big cities like Sydney in Australia, they're like literally just four train stations, and you start at Central and you end at Circular Quay, and that's it. The city's done. So
Mhm.
yeah, interesting to go to these really big cities where New York and Manhattan, like that's just one big thing now, really, isn't it? So
Mm.
I find it pretty interesting. Yeah, yeah. Again, thanks for taking the time out to do this, and uh, so I believe you're a newly appointed CEO. That must be something.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Well, yeah, we can start there. It's one of the many hats that I wear. It's been pretty exciting, but pretty chaotic, as you can imagine. Um, so yeah, as you say, new CEO and co-founder of a company called Mileva Security Labs, which has the mission of making all AI safe, secure, and trustworthy. And it's been an amazing journey because um, the company became official on the 1st of May. And we originally started talking about it at the start of last year. My co founder, Julie, is like an astrophysicist, a PhD, has worked in data science a lot longer than I have. She's really cool. And at the time, I was doing my PhD in adversarial machine learning, and we were sort of talking about where AI was headed, and it wasn't AI security and AI risk just wasn't talked about very much. Even a year and a half ago when we started talking about the company, and like I could see the work going on in the academic community, and I knew that this was a big deal, and I knew that it was a threat. But whenever we talked to people outside, it was kind of like, oh, but it's very academic. Are there any real world implications of this? And we both had our like jobs in government, and so we just didn't really pursue it. And then ChatGPT came out, and everything changed, and suddenly everyone's talking about AI risk and safety and security, and we were like, well, this is it. We just have to go for it. So we did. And yeah, it's been an interesting couple of months of transitioning from my previous role into this role, and then maintaining like my PhD and other side jobs to try and afford it. But it's been great, and I'm super excited.
Yeah, look, it's awesome, but at the same time, I can't imagine how you manage to do all of this stuff at the same time. Um, so yeah, it must be, yeah, it must be really, really busy and juggling a lot of things at the same time, and a lot of that happening right now, right? But at the same time, I mean, like, yeah, big, huge congrats to you to getting it
Thank
done. And,
you.
it's just so awesome to see. I have a lot of respect for people who go out on their own sort of thing. It's very challenging. It's very hard. But at the same time, the fact that you've done it shows that you're already halfway there, right? Now
Mm,
it's literally just a bit of keep doing what you do as best as possible, and let things work out a little bit organically as well.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
really exciting to see that happening. But
No, thanks, Fish. I appreciate it. I think like we have a long journey ahead. Like the hardest parts are absolutely before us, but the idea of not trying is far scarier than the idea of failing. And I guess that's a good perspective to go in with, because there's a lot of startups fail, so we have to be open to that possibility. But we're sure going to do everything we can not to let it.
oh no, definitely, I have no doubt you will be a big success. Look, AI is obviously big right now.
Mhm.
ChatGPT, changed everything, and everyone's jumped on the whole thing. And I wanted to really get someone smart like you who actually understands AI to have a chat with, because everyone's got their own views on it, but majority of people don't really. basically know what they're talking about most of the times. They're just regurgitating what they've heard. I have been interested in AI for a long, long, long time. I think I years ago I picked up a book by Toby Walsh, and I was like,
Mm.
wow, holy shit, that's I need to get into it, right? And
Mhm.
I started reading everything that he's ever done, and I started stalking him on LinkedIn and all that, and finally last year I was fortunate enough to actually meet him. We had him as the keynote speaker at HCKSYD.
Mhm.
So I got the opportunity to sit down with him and have a bit of a chat. And really cool guy. I mean, for everything that he's accomplished, he's the top AI scientist in the world right now. But really cool guy. Learned a lot from him. Got his perspective on a few things.
Mhm.
But like I've got you now, so I really want to dig into it a little bit more. Um, ChatGPT, what do you think of it? Not necessarily the actual company and all that, but
Yeah.
the tech stack behind it. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh gosh, honestly, I'm sick of hearing about ChatGPT. Um, it's great and it's exciting, and I feel like the really cool thing about ChatGPT is it's the first time where people could really engage with AI.
Yeah,
Um, I say quotes because everyone uses the term AI a little bit differently.
yeah,
But I think that was a really great thing to come out of releasing ChatGPT. You know, people could actually have an active interest and a stake. Like, every person suddenly knows about AI because ChatGPT is all over the media. And I think that's a good thing because I think we should be demystifying what AI is and what it means and how it works and what kind of impact it could have at both the technical but also the societal level. So I think that's a great thing. But the kind of technology that underpins ChatGPT is not new, and it's definitely not the first of its kind. There's a lot of other, large language models. There's other foundation models. There's other ways of using GPT beyond chat. But in terms of bringing it to the media, I think it's fantastic. And I think throughout my career, and it's not like I started in AI, a lot of people have moved into AI from other fields. And I think that's a really great thing about it. It's the kind of field that really benefits from diverse perspectives. Because I sort of came from, like, I studied physics and anthropology, and my roles, like my professional roles since then, were in data science in like different ways, in consulting, in academia, in a startup, and then in government. And in all of those roles, I saw them sort of grappling with AI. Like it's always been this buzzword ever since the 1950s when John McCarthy coined the term. People have always been talking about AI, but what it's meant over the years has morphed, and the kind of business buzzword that it's become over the last decade is one where people are really excited about it and rapidly trying to adopt it, and getting a lot of investment if they talk about AI. But what it actually means at the technical level is really quite foggy because it refers to all sorts of things. And all the workplaces I've been in have really like struggled with that. Like, how do you take like one or many of the technologies that fall under the broad umbrella of artificial intelligence and actually make it work in your business or organization? And I think that's the trouble with artificial intelligence at the real practical enterprise level, let alone the very existential AGI. Where is the future of AI and large language models headed? There's still a bit of a disconnect between how it's used in the real world and the kinds of things that it could do, even if that future is pretty soon. But that's not the future for everyone. So I think artificial intelligence is a great field to be in because it does, like, there are really cool technical challenges. Like, I love looking at adversarial machine learning. That's what I want to spend all of my spare time on. But then it introduces really cool philosophical questions as well, and questions about humanity and what does it mean to be a human if you have an AI who can, do math better than humans? Does that mean that we are, what is our value add? Like, what's different about us? So I think that's what's really cool about AI.
Well, look, yeah, this is really exciting stuff, right? So this is going to sound a bit like a rant, but bear with me, right? There's a question at the
Yeah,
end.
go for it.
So let's get deep into AI, right? And from a
Mm-hmm.
historical point of view, you mentioned going back 50 years or whatever. I'd probably go back even further, all the way back to Boole and Babbage level, right? And when
Mm,
logics started coming up, and um, I think you'd agree when I say something like things changed quite dramatically once we had people like Alan Turing jump into the mix, right?
mm,
He's one of my like biggest heroes of all time. But at the same time, what I'm trying to say is, over the years, going Boole, Babbage, Turing, McCarthy, all these guys, right, and to this day, there's a couple of things that have come out of it, which a lot of people are confused about, or they don't know they're confused about. Specifically, what I'm talking about is AI and machine learning, right? And especially in the cyberspace, there's a lot of marketing that happens around this AI, right? Let AI do your cybersecurity or whatever. And the problem that I've had with all these AI, again in quotes, AI models for cybersecurity being pushed out by vendor marketing is, the more you look into it, the more it looks like machine learning.
mm-hmm.
The more you look into that, it looks even less like machine learning, and it really becomes. I mean, it's about asking the questions, right? You keep asking them questions, and like at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the conversation, you're like, it's not even machine learning in a way, right? It's more like anomaly detection.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're feeding the engine with what should be the right behavior, what should be the right thing you're seeing. The moment it deviates from that, you alert, right? And that becomes your, again, in quotes, AI. Um, so I'd like to pick your brains on that. That was a rant, by the way, right?
Oh,
So what's
uh,
for the common man out there, right? What is the difference between machine learning and AI? Anomaly detection is pretty self-explanatory, right? Let's leave that
mhm.
out. It's not even that doesn't even make the table here. But so what really is the difference, really basic level, between artificial intelligence and machine learning?
That's a great question. And I think everyone you ask would have a slightly different interpretation of that as well. Machine learning is a like a specific technology. There's different machine learning algorithms, but broadly, they take input data, you map it to output data, and then through the machine learning process, the model learns by sees and weights to map the input to the output. So when it sees a new piece of data, it can make a prediction at a high level. Like machine learning as a technical field has concrete methodologies, whereas artificial intelligence doesn't refer to any specific technology. It refers to what a thing can do. And so within that umbrella of what AI can do, a lot of organizations broadly define it as something that a human might otherwise have done, which is really broad. And ideally there should be some like specific technology under that, but the actual definition of AI doesn't really refer to what that has to be. So AI could be machine learning, it could include analytics and data science or expert systems automation, um, all the new cool techniques that we have, as well as the very basic ones. But artificial intelligence is about being able to do something intelligent with a system that is artificial, i.e., non biological, i.e., non human. But then, as you say, everyone will have a slightly different interpretation of what qualifies and disqualifies something as being intelligent. Like a lot of people, yeah, there's different thoughts around comparing humans and AI in, within time, like what an AI could do in a certain amount of time that a human could or couldn't do, or the extent to which it's just decision based, or whether there's connections between other systems as well. which is interesting as a field. And as a as a ex consultant, I remember being on a project, and I won't name the firm because they were great, but they were a consulting company, and I think we were like 7 weeks into an 8 week project, and the partner came along and was like, Harriet, can you just sprinkle some AI into this solution? The client would be really happy to know that we use some AI to do this. And it was like I don't know, a data remediation project. And I was like, no, I mean, no, you can't do that. What do you even mean by that? It's lost a lot of its meaning in the business world because, and I can't remember who said it. I feel like she was um, someone in Google, but like machine learning is in Python. Um, yeah.
In the presentation slide, PPDX.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. The
that
guys
was
at some
that,
point.
that went around. Yeah, look, yeah. Last question on ChatGPT and the like, and then I want to move into the adversarial AI side of things. But yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. AI is has become this buzzword at this time, and people try to capitalize on it as much as possible. Um, but with ChatGPT and more recently ChatGPT 4. What level of actual intelligence does it really have? Because I have tinkered with it as everyone else.
Mhm,
I have looked into it. I was listening to some scientists talk about it on podcasts and stuff. And one
mhm,
interesting thing that someone brought up on one of the podcasts I was listening was it's pretty okay with in its current stage with the data that has already been fed into it, and it can play around with that pretty well. But it gets tricky, and it kind of even like fails quite spectacularly when you start getting into more uh, things that probably don't rely on logic that much, or specifically predefined logic. As in,
mhm,
like, I think that the example they gave was they gave it a scenario based on the Formula One championships from last season, I think it was, where for anyone who doesn't follow Formula One, it really came down to the wire. No one knew who was going to win the entire championship right until the last race, because Lewis and Verstappen were basically just fighting for it, and they were anyone could have won. Like it wasn't a clear, like, someone has so much lead about the other one. So it came down to the wire in the end, and I think what they did was they gave that scenario to ChatGPT and said, "Hey, given that scenario," and they changed a couple of things in it, and like, who would you predict to win? And it was interesting to see that, because we already knew the result by the time, right? Who won?
mhm.
It completely failed. Basically, it started giving out stats and facts and stuff like, hey, according to this data, this driver has most whatever and whatever, but it couldn't like say, hey, um, it'll be Lewis or Verstappen, something like that. I mean, I'm rephrasing the whole thing, but
Yeah.
the point being, um, it looks like it isn't there yet, as if like it can't really think outside of the box. And the reason I'm bringing that up is like, there's a lot of talk about it, but is it something that people are using as a personal assistant for the most part? As in, like, hey, I want to write this email. This is what I'm thinking.
Mhm.
Uh, Give me the entire email, and it gives. I mean, a lot of that is happening, but is that really where it kind of ends for now?
Oh, good question. What is the future of ChatGPT? Yeah, I think there's so much promise around a tool like that, and comparing each evolution of GPT is phenomenal. It improves so much every time. However, we define what it means to improve. And yeah, there's lots of different modes and scenarios under which ChatGPT fails. It gives us the incorrect answer. But it also depends what we mean by incorrect. I mean, definitely facts versus nonsense is an evaluation that we need to like. There's an absolute true or false, but models like that give back what the most likely responses that a human wants to receive. So um, the person I've seen most eloquently describe it is probably Rob Miles. He's a YouTuber in AI safety and alignment, but there's a lot of good sort of AI alignment research out there looking at what it means to really evaluate a model effectively, given that apart from just training these models on a lot of human data, which is inherently biased because humans are biased in all sorts of ways, positive and negatively, and then even through like reinforcement learning with human feedback, which makes the responses a lot more eloquent and reasonable to humans. At the end of the day, we're always receiving the most likely thing that a human would want to receive. It's not an intelligent system. It's just very, very good at predicting what a human is most likely to view favorably as a response or an output. And I think the question about where ChatGPT could be used, I mean, it doesn't need to be a perfect system to be used really well, right? Like, I've been stunned by the number of organizations I'm aware of that are already adopting GPT-4. Um, and it's exciting as long as you include some kind of checks and balances in that system. It's fine. Like being able to produce reports from ChatGPT for your organization and save that poor report writer a job that they don't want to do, then fantastic. And even for my PhD, right? Every so often, I have to write a piece of code that I'm not really familiar with, and I can ask it for a bit of help, and it's great. And then I just incorporate it into the project that I'm working on, and I can even ask it to explain how it works to me. So I think it's a fantastic tool. But we obviously shouldn't trust it blindly, right? Just like we shouldn't trust any tool blindly. And the, I mean, thinking about what it means for these kinds of tools to be intelligent also makes us wonder what it means for us to be intelligent, because humans often give incorrect answers or answers that are full of bias or responses that just aren't up to scratch in all sorts of ways. And assuming that a human is the absolute, goalpost that you want to be aiming towards probably puts us on too high a pedestal. But then you get into sort of the future of AGI and when AI becomes better than humans. And I saw a recent report about how AI is more likely to be favored through evolution over humans. I'll have to check who that was by. But as someone who sort of also studied anthropology and evolutionary science, I feel like that's a really interesting thing to ponder. And beyond the future of how ChatGPT can be used in the next, 1 to 5 years, great. But like, what does that future look like 50 to 100 years from now? That's the kind of future, like, it's the future that we're creating now based on the decisions we have now. And that's why we decided to make like Mileva a security company. And that's why like my PhD was always on the security aspect of AI, because absolutely AI is going to be the future, right? It's pretty clear. But what steps can we take now to make sure that that future is positive? Because there's people thinking about it, but only recently, and it always is a step behind the pace of where the technology is at. It's still an afterthought, just as it was with cybersecurity. So that's a very waffly answer to your question. Where's ChatGPT going?
That's perfect. That's a really good answer. And I guess there's no strict answer at this point in time, at least to that
Mm,
question. But yeah, I mean that's a good segue into adversarial AI and basically what yeah, give us a little bit about the actual term, what it means and what's involved in it, and
mhm.
can dig a bit more into that.
Yeah. Okay, so adversarial machine learning in its sort of academic context really refers to the ability to like hack or deceive primarily like machine learning models by evading a classification, reducing the confidence in a classification, leaking data that the model was trained on, or hijacking the model to do something it wasn't intended to do. And the idea of hacking algorithms has existed a really long time. Like, as long as any kind of, I don't know, spam filter has existed, criminals have been trying to evade spam filters. But the field really came to the fore in sort of 2013, 2014, with Ian Goodfellow and Zegedy. They wrote this paper where they took a picture of a panda. They created an adversarial example, which is a bunch of adversarial pixels that's crafted based on the target model, and then overlaying the adversarial example on the original image, and then showing that to the classifier. The classifier predicts it to be a gibbon, even though to a human, it's the adversarial example isn't perceptible to the human eye. And so from there, it kind of exploded into all of these cool computer vision applications around disguising objects from classifiers, um, adding, backdoors and triggers, like almost all of the cybersecurity analogies you can think of. Um, there's an equivalent for in AI security and adversarial machine learning. And so the way that I use AI security as a term on top of that is exactly as we would cybersecurity. So AI security refers to the technical and governance practices that aim to um, protect AI systems from exploitation, and then adversarial machine learning is sort of the offensive toolkit to do that. And then since large language models and ChatGPT have come out, that field has expanded as well into things like prompt engineering in large language models, because even though large language models based on transformers and it's still sort of machine learning, reinforcement learning, it's a very different attack surface in terms of the adversarial aspect. So it's changed a lot as a field over 10 years. And it's only recently gone through an evolution of being just a very academic, niche, will this really, can this apply to the real world at all, until the present, where it's really starting to emerge as a discipline. And there's a growing um, recognition that the same kinds of technical and governance and policy and legislative protections that secure cyber systems, we need to really think about in the AI space as well. So that's why it's an exciting field. It's so new. It's a great space to start. Like, we get to start at the ground floor and see it go up. And it's sort of a privilege to be in it from the beginning, from remembering some of the really early examples of adversarial machine learning and attacks on AI. But especially because this is the time when we can actually do something about it and make sure that productionized AI systems, that we don't go through the same journey that cybersecurity has been on since the introduction of the internet. And now it's, one of the world's greatest technical and geostrategic threats. We can't let that happen with AI. So this is when we have to do something about it now.
Yeah, that's very important and really interesting as well. And I mean, a lot of that probably needs discussions at the highest levels of government and international bodies who can make it happen. I know Toby has been doing a lot of that to a point where he is
Mm.
indefinitely, I think that's the term, indefinitely banned from Russia. Um, so he doesn't exist in.
Probably doesn't want to go there at the moment anyway.
Yeah, I don't think he's planning on going there at any point in time. But they've been big opponents of whatever he's been trying to do in that space, is put protections in and rules and governance around it. that's one way of doing it. Definitely, that needs to be looked at. But the other thing that I was thinking of is in our world in cybersecurity, supply chain attacks are pretty huge. Have been for the last few years now. Because when I think about AI and something similar to a supply chain compromise would be disastrous, right? If someone can compromise the platform that, I don't know, that ChatGPT or whatever, right? And there's so many of these models now that sits and basically just control it from there for as long as they're discovered or not discovered, right? That's pretty scary. As in, if it's a bad actor who has access to it at that level,
Hmm.
they can literally just wait until AI is more widely implemented and is being used to make decisions or used to actually do stuff in infrastructure and stuff like that. They
Hmm.
could easily um, give out the wrong decisions or wrong information, feeding whatever, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? And is that something that has even been brought up in the AI sort of community?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting thing about AI security is that it's still a cybersecurity problem. It's just an extra security threat on top of that. So the all of the cyber security needs that an organization has are still really important to protecting AI systems as well, especially things like accessing data, accessing model internals and weights. But then you just have this additional layer on top of that, which is all the ways that the AI system in itself is an attack surface. In addition to that, and the ways that models can be um, altered or deceived in sort of similar but really specific and unique ways that are different to cybersecurity. And a lot of the I remember as a data science practitioner and someone who is either implementing or selling AI at various points of my career, um, safety or security of AI was never a consideration, and that was pretty standard. And I don't know at the time anyone who really talked about it, apart from bias. Like bias was always a topic of discussion, which is important. And it was only when I started my PhD a few years ago that I learnt about adversarial machine learning, and I was kind of like, why isn't anyone talking about this? This has existed as a threat surface as long as data science solutions and models and AI, and they've been around for a really long time. So I think it's interesting for organizations to consider. I think that so the a Microsoft statistic and report surveyed businesses and their AI adoption, and over 90% of businesses say that they use some kind of AI, and only 14% of them were aware of or implement any kind of AI security. And I mean, obviously, the first thought I have is, well, is it even AI they're implementing anyway? Maybe it's just a
Yeah,
some kind of basic analytic. But even so, analytics can be hacked or deceived. That's the spam filter example. So there's a lot of different ways where both at the technical level that there needs to be like there are simple controls that organizations can put in place that typically aren't, because people just aren't talking about AI security enough. But then at the governance level and the policy level and the legislative level, I still feel like it's not talked about enough. And places like Europe through GDPR are looking at privacy in AI systems, and that's good. That's a start. But there still isn't enough of this broader dialogue around seeing AI as an attack surface in its own right, because even the field where it sort of posits AI as, you can have attacks on AI systems and then you have defenses. That's not really, if you look at the cyber analogy, that's just not how it's talked about. It's talked about as threat modeling, and it's risk based. And that's the kind of mentality that we need to bring into AI. You need to have ecosystems to support all of this stuff. You need a policy ecosystem. You need a technical ecosystem. You need standards and guidance and communities of interest who are talking about this. It shouldn't be the onus of academics or even necessarily of just the tech companies and their red teams and their recently fired ethics teams to implement this, because if you leave it up to the big tech companies, um, the open AI and Anthropic and those really deep tech heavy companies, they hold a lot of power because most enterprise solutions are based off AI products that are already sold in, other commercial products, or they're brought in as open source solutions that are already trained and they might be fine tuned, but organizations don't have the compute or the resources to be able to train models, collect enough data themselves. The ecosystem in AI is really different to cybersecurity in that respect, because it just takes so much compute and so much money, as we can see from how much it took to train GPT-3, GPT-4, that it introduces a really different kind of dependence on tech companies, and it's almost analogous to the dependence on end-to-end encryption and that power going back to the tech companies instead of being government. So I think it's a really interesting landscape to consider, and then on top of that, all the jurisdictional differences and how on earth you can make um, state or country based guidance for AI systems work together. Because there's not a lot of legislation yet, but even at the policy level now, it's very difficult. And who holds that balance of power?
That's going to be a really hard one, Harriet, because not a lot of people, not a lot of policy makers at this point in time, I guess, even understand the basics of what's
Mm.
involved, right? So you'll have to literally like train a generation of those policymakers who have enough, insight into AI and all that. It's going to be a bit of a uphill battle. But on
Yeah.
that, on the regulations and everything, and talking about GDPR, for example, um, how mature do you think the whole system is, or is it a matter of hey, we're just literally just getting started?
Definitely more on the end of just getting started.
Yeah,
It's the first comment you made about having to upskill people in AI, and particularly AI security, because it's still not talked about. It's really important. And as a practitioner, as teams, we would go into different organizations and kind of their executives or their C suite wouldn't understand AI and would kind of be like, "Oh my gosh, they don't even know what AI is." And now I take a far more empathetic approach, because why on earth should they know what AI is?
yeah,
It's a technology, or it's a term that is constantly shifting. It's very technical. Why should we expect everyone to know what it is in enough detail, or certainly is in a similar level of detail that a data scientist would? I think it's important to be able to demystify what some of these technologies mean, because so when I did work in New York, I worked at this startup slash small company called Decoded, and we'd travel around North America and basically do that. We would demystify different technology concepts to leadership of Fortune 500 organizations, and AI and machine learning was one of those topics. And it was fascinating going into all these really different organizations and meeting with their leadership and talking about artificial intelligence, and seeing that all these organizations across different sectors, different scales, different levels of technology maturity, all have exactly the same questions and really want to be able to know what AI is, or what all these technologies are, but because usually the only way they have of learning about it is through sellers, people like vendors. And that's a difficult place to be in, because you want to be able to interrogate different products that you're being sold. And it's hard to do that if you don't have the right lexicon or the right terminology, or you're deliberately bamboozled by, terms that are meaningless, or that aren't really important. And it's important as well for organizational leadership to be able to have that same level of interrogation with their own data scientists, because a data science problem, as we know, is very different to a business problem. And there's, you know, it's a reason why so many data science pilots never make it through the proof of concept stage. Like, it's really difficult to implement data science projects at scale in an organization. And it again comes down to being able to have a shared understanding of what the technology is. And I think that's really important to think about in terms of AI and AI security, and having good conversations between practitioners, different kinds of companies, research companies, non technical companies who might need to use AI, and then policymakers, and people in government. Because if we can't have those strong, robust dialogues, then um, that's when we don't have, a shared goal that we can all aim towards. Because AI security is far bigger than the technology itself.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I know you just started your company and all that, but what's your primary focus at the moment? Like, what are the things that you're going to be doing? And as much as you can share about, what kind of projects you will be taking on in the coming days.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's the AI security space is, like, it's so emerging. Like, it's still maturing a lot. And so a lot of the work that we're looking at doing is around um, our AI security framework, which sort of maps, like, things that I'm aware of from, like, the academic community and my PhD outputs, and existing best practice around AI systems, and then all these regulations for AI that are incoming. There's a lot of things that are coming down the pipeline that organizations also need to comply with, or at least be highly recommended to comply with. And we advise all enterprises through both understanding the AI risk in their organization, and the controls and mitigations they can put in place, specifically into their organizations, because it is really different. And something that we think is really important is being able to do that with empathy, where our business model in the company is not about being the consultant who goes in and does the thing for them, and then, charge a lot of money and have to come back to maintain it. We're structuring it a little bit more like the startup that I worked at before, where we actually train organizations in AI and AI security, and ideally how they can, like, the executives can be empowered to lead AI driven organizations that manage their AI security risk, and that team leaders and practitioners in those organizations are armed with the knowledge to be able to implement a lot of those controls and mitigations themselves. So it's going to be an interesting space to work in, having seen the different kinds of um, AI systems already in use across different organizations. But at the end of the day, they're really not that different at all. Most enterprises have key challenges, similar similar reasons to need to use AI. So it's going to be really exciting. And even if we weren't doing this company, like I would, this is what I'd want to do all day anyway. I mean, I spend like all my spare time working on this PhD, and God, I mean, I'll finish it eventually, but I've been doing it part time alongside my work for a long time. So it's a marathon, not a sprint, but I love it. Like I don't know what I'd do when I finish. I just love it so much. It's a thrilling technical area. It's so good to just get into a meaty problem in a machine learning system and then find a solution and an outcome, or some type, because I'm looking at the adversarial aspect, attack a system. It's really fun. But then like being able to link that to all the existential and philosophical questions and the so what of it, like what do we actually do with this, is great. So even if we didn't have the company, like I'm thrilled. I'd be doing this anyway.
That's the best.
So yeah, it should be really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have any problems with keeping yourself busy for the next few years the way things are going at the moment. But other than like the usual, people don't understand what AI is and all of that stuff. What are some of the other challenges that you face from a business point of view when you're talking to people? Uh, I'm guessing the skills shortage is probably one of them, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. So understanding AI, I'd say, is definitely the top problem. It's the universal problem. Understanding what AI is and why AI security is important or worth caring about. I think now that ChatGPT has brought different AI related risks to the fore. Like every day, I see in the media something about risk, and that's it's great that it's growing in recognition. But I mean, ChatGPT is just one kind of AI, and there's so many other kinds of AI systems. And like most of my PhD work is looking in the computer vision space, and so looking at autonomous vehicles and how important it is that autonomous vehicles have trustworthy computer vision systems and can't get attacked by an adversarial stop sign or different things on the road. So things like that have brought AI security to the fore and helped to answer that question for executives of why do we need to care about it. But I sort of liken this phase of AI to, I don't know, the 70s or the 80s, in terms of cybersecurity. There's a few threats out there. So MITRE, which is lists, cybersecurity TTPs. They have a framework that lists adversarial machine learning TTPs as well. So that's a resource that is
That's
um,
growing, by the way, the number of threat
oh,
actors
growing,
in that.
growing massively. Yeah, and then there's other resources like what does it stand for? So AIAAIC, which is the AI Algorithmic and Automation Incidents and Controversies. They have a database, a repository of different AI related incidents. And so it's really interesting to look through something like that as well and see some of the commonalities. And a lot of them are about like misinformation, using systems like ChatGPT to automatically create misinformation and disinformation, things like deepfakes, a few computer vision based hacks as well. But I think there's until really big incidents hit the media, it's still a bit of a so what for organizations, this or one of, this is something that affects OpenAI or companies like that, but it's not going to affect my finance business or my healthcare business or my automotive business. And that's a challenge because all of those businesses use some kind of AI as well, or they are looking to. And it's important that you think about risk management from the beginning, because just like cybersecurity, if you don't think about it from the start, then you don't put the right mitigations in place. Like secure from the start is still a concept in AI that really needs to be considered as well. So I'd say that's the second challenge. for businesses. But then, yeah, as you say, the skills shortage, even in AI at all, it's so hard to hire people. Every every so often, someone will send me like a job ad for one of those big tech companies, and I'm obviously not looking, but I don't have any time as it is. But I look down at the salary, and I'm like, oh my god, it's they really need these people, and there aren't enough of them. And AI security in particular is something that isn't even a real job description yet, let alone enough people with the right skills. But I think that's an opportunity as well, because I don't know anyone in AI security who has worked in, what does a typical career path look like, even for most of the people in AI that I know. I think the great thing about AI is that, yes, it's a technical discipline, and you need to be able to code to do at least the model building aspects of AI. But with some of these technologies, soon you won't really need to be able to code. You'd really just need to be able to have good critical thinking skills. You need to understand enough about the statistics behind models to understand what it means. And then you need to think about the so what of it and put it in the perspective of the enterprise that's using it, or the outcome that it's looking to provide. And I guess a lot of fields are like that. Cybersecurity is like that too. But I think there's an opportunity in there to deposit some of these fields less as, the hacky computer scientist who sits in the basement drinking, soft drink all day, and to a career where, all kinds of skills and expertise can contribute to it. And all you need is the drive to just, see something through to the end.
Yeah, it's funny that people are sending you, job posts, and you should be able to look at the profile and go,
In case they
"This
think
is the
this company
CEO
has
of
got
a
a plan.
company.
They're like, this is a good plan
It's the CEO of a company, but hey, would you like to work?" Yeah, that's. I bet they're using AI for doing that.
B.
But yeah, look, it's a very interesting field, right? And especially the security aspect of it. I think the biggest problem with putting in all these things in place before it blows up, or at the right time, is that the whole industry is driven by capital. And these things are usually expenses, so it's hard to go like, we're just starting out this new field, a new industry, and we got to spend all this money, and it's gonna bring us nothing back. And that's exactly what happened in cybersecurity, because it's
Mhm.
the last thing you want to really get into. And unfortunately, it's only when you get attacked or breached, then people go like, oh my god, we need to actually spend money, because it's an expense, right?
Mhm.
Bring you anything unless you're the company who's implementing it. So
Yeah.
that's the tricky part around that. But yeah, hopefully, we learn from the past and mistakes in the cyber world.
Yeah.
I reckon this is even more important, moving forward. And yeah, I guess the last question I have is probably the most interesting one. How far away are we from Skynet blowing us all apart?
Oh, a great question. So for your listeners, Vish and I know each other because of B-Side Sydney, which you did a phenomenal job in organizing. And the presentation that I gave was called How to Hack an AI. And I start with the premise that, whenever I talk to people about AI and I ask them what it is, everyone says Skynet and the Terminator. And I don't know if that's because a lot of people I work with or are friends with are all, I don't know, born in the 80s. That's just the movie that they that they fall back on. But I think it's one of those first movies where AI was really brought to the fore. Like there's a lot of movies that have AI, but the Terminator really sticks in people's minds. And so I basically look at Skynet as an attack surface, and I show like different adversarial attacks that you could use um, to disguise Sarah Connor from recognition and attack from Skynet. And I even with the AI security piece of like projecting into the future and is this really worth investing in now? um, People like Eliezer Yudkowsky, who is we know him for his AI safety and alignment research and work and thought leadership, and like people like him have sort of clear ideas or at least approximate projections into the future of when they think that AGI would happen based on current development, and it's usually within the next 100 years or so, that they at least put a time frame on. And if we have a thought experiment of um what does like where is the current pace of AI headed, and what would we do now to at least tweak that to make it slightly more positive? um and it's obviously hard to predict the future. It depends on like the AI winter was a real challenge because of lack of compute and stuff. So it's dependent on so many things like that, and our geostrategic and political circumstances as well. Um, I won't attempt to predict the future. I think it's just too hard to put numbers and timelines on things like this, particularly
It's
we don't
2060.
know.
It's 2062 according to Toby. Toby Wall.
Yeah.
That's when.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Are we going to ever reach AGI? Will we ever get Skynet? I think we'll continue shifting the goalposts as humans about what that even means, because
yeah,
even John McCarthy said as soon as we understand how it works, we don't call it AI anymore. I imagine that even as our technology becomes so much more mature, it becomes really impressive, we'll still see the vulnerabilities in it and compare it to humans, and we'll never I don't think we'd ever really reach a point where we're satisfied with where it is. Talking about AGI kind of implies a point where it stops, like that's it, we've reached it, and now you just kind of sit back and
relax.
let it control humanity and tell us what to do, finally have that relief from decision making. But that's just not how human society works. um
Yeah, that's.
so we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. But hey, look, this is a very, very fascinating topic, and obviously, we need to do a part two of it. I know you've got stuff to do and all that. So, first of all, thanks a lot for being here today. It was awesome talking to you. As like I already feel way smarter. So,
Too,
that's
too
awesome.
kind. No, the pleasure's all mine, Vish. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely, and we should do a part two of it because I can talk about this for hours, and there's a lot of stuff we didn't get into
Oh
today.
yeah.
But yeah, look, thanks a lot, and good luck with your new company, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of success in that, and we'll hopefully see you again sometime this year in Sydney at one of the conferences or something like that. So yeah, awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vish. Appreciate it, and see you at the next conference.
All right, thanks, Harriet. See ya. Bye.
Yeah.